So I have the product of my Carvone experiment as well as the product from the 4-T-butyl cyclohexanone experiment. I've already gotten the mass of my final product and recorded that in my notebook. So now what I need to do is make up my NMR samples. Both of them are going to be dissolved in chloroform D, so deuterated chloroform CdCl3 instead of CHCl3. You need to have 2 NMR tubes and a couple of test tubes as well. So for the liquid, the Carvone product, you can just draw up a little bit. I go kind of just to where the pipette gets wider. We're aiming for, 70 to 80 milligrams, but we certainly don't have to be exact. So this is my Carvone, and I'm getting a nice clean pipette, and I'm going to add about a ml of deuterated chloroform. So I'm hoping you can see that. So I'm adding that in there. I cap this up right away. We don't want to get extra moisture in there. Okay. I make sure it's mixed well. And then holding this right next to, holding the test tube with the solution right next to the NMR tube, I'm going to transfer the solution from the test tube to the NMR tube. I can reuse this pipette because it only touched the deuterated chloroform and now it's touching the solution, so that's okay. I put them right next to each other because once I draw up the solution, if I have to move my pipette very far, then I might end up dribbling all over the bench. Okay. So what we want to aim for is around 3 fingers deep. That is a good total amount. This one is the, I don't have anything better. Okay, so this one is my Carvone product. Alright, now I'm going to discard this in the broken glass container as soon as I'm done. Now I have my solid sample, and for a solid sample this is where it is especially critical that you make up your sample, your NMR sample, in a test tube and don't try to get this solid into the NMR tube. This is quite chunky, so you'll want to scrape it all off and really mix it up, just in case your sample sort of somehow got mixed together. Well, actually, if it sort of happened to solidify such that more of one stereoisomer collected in one place, then you don't want to happen to take a sample from that place, because that would give you skewed results. So you can mix it all up, right? Scrape it off, mix it all up, and try to get a nice homogeneous sample. So now I'm going to scoop a little bit out. You can, let's see, sometimes if it's staticky that becomes really problematic. I'm dropping some, so I'm losing some of my product, but this, I don't care about yield. So that's plenty of material. I am going to clean this up when I'm done. Okay, and now I'm getting a new pipette. If you do want to weigh this out, you're aiming for about 50 mgs. Make sure you use one of the very small, 50 mgs of your solid product. Make sure you use the really small weigh boat, because then it becomes easy to transfer from there into the test tube. Still not directly into the NMR tube. Okay, so I'm drawing up about that much chloroform. Okay. Now I touched my pipette to my test tube, so even if I decided I needed a little bit more of the chloroform, I would not reuse this pipette. I would have to get a clean one. Okay, look how nicely that dissolved. All right, and so now I'm going to transfer this into the NMR tube. Okay. Be careful when you put the pipette into the NMR tube. First of all, watch your depth perception. It looks like you're in there, but you might be behind it. But then you don't want to jam it in there because you will either break your pipette and then you'll have little glass shards in there, or even worse, you'll break your NMR tube. Okay, so this one is this sample, and I'm putting on the cap. So find a way to label them so that you know which one you're dealing with, and then you're going to put it into the rack so that your instructor can run these on the auto sampler. So this is the back bench by the whiteboard, and so there's a couple of NMR tube racks. Your instructor might have it different. And then they might ask you to put them in a particular order, or to do one rack for the carvone and one rack for the t-butylcyclohexanone product, or maybe they'll ask you to go 1 to 12 and then 13 to 24. Please don't pick your favorite number. Put them in order, because this is how they're going to be put into the auto sampler. And it's not very convenient to have, to have the carvone and then the t-butylcyclohexanone and then the next person's t-butylcyclohexanone and then the carvone, and because they're going to be run using different programs. So it'll be really good for your instructor if you have all of the carvone products in a row and then all of the t-butylcyclohexanone products in a row. So make sure that this is filled out with whichever sample name is. In this case, we have NMR rack J, and then you will record your name. All right, and then you should also record this in your notebook that my sample was the rack J sample 1. So that later your instructor can say, okay, here's the spectrum for 1, and you'll know that that belongs to you. In this case, because this is set up for a single experiment, then your instructor knows that the solvent is chloroform for all of them. So that's why we don't specify the solvent, only because by specifying which experiment, we know which solvent it is. And that's all you need to do to prep your NMR samples.